Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. You're going to love this one. These two guys walk into a bar. No, that's not. A guy walks into a bar with a dog. No, it's not it. A dog walks into a guy and a duck and a dog walk in. Oh, well, I can't remember. What good is a joke without a punchline? No good at all. We got a book in the Bible that you might wonder why it's there. It's a great story. Everybody loves the story. But if you ask somebody, why is that included in Scripture, they might not be able to tell you. And I'm going to tell you today, it's because the book has a punchline. There's a punchline at the end of it that's intended to kind of get you. The book is the book of Ruth. You kind of know the story probably. Ruth is a Moabite, not an Israelite, who has married an Israelite man who dies. Her husband's mother, her mother-in-law is a woman named Naomi, also an Israelite. And Naomi, who's been living with the Moabites, now decides to go back home to Israel. Ruth, who's the main character in the book, is a Moabite, not an Israelite. She had married an Israelite who's now died, and she's with her mother-in-law, an Israelite named Naomi. Naomi and Ruth and the whole family's been living in the area of Moab, and Naomi decides, with the death of her two sons, to go back home to Israel. One daughter-in-law stays behind in Moab, but Ruth says to Naomi, "I'm going with you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your God will be my God." And Ruth accompanies Naomi back to the land of Israel. While there, she encounters a man named Boaz. You know the story. She's gleaning grain out in the field. That, by the way, she's entitled to that. That grain left over as the harvesters went through the first time could not be gleaned by the harvesters. That belonged to the fatherless, the widows, and the poor. And Ruth is a widow. So that gleaning from that crop belonged to Ruth. Boaz kicked a little extra off the wagon too as he went, but she was entitled to what she was doing. Boaz is a relative of hers, and we encounter another little strange law in the Old Testament called the law of levirate marriage, where if a man dies and is childless but married, his next of kin, usually a brother, is supposed to give a child to his former wife, his widow, and marry her, take her into his family. Because that accounted for the laws of inheritance. It allowed that inheritance to go through to his son, that son that the brother or the near relative would provide to his widow would be counted as his heir. And so Boaz takes Ruth as his wife by this law of levirate marriage. That's where we get the punchline, the end of the book. And you find out one of the reasons it's here. The end of the book, verse 16. Ruth and Boaz now have a child. Naomi, the mother-in-law, took the child and laid him in her bosom and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." Naomi gets credit. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. And now you know the punchline. The punchline is that this child born to Ruth and Boaz, Ruth the Moabite, Boaz the Israelite, is David, or is the grandfather of David, who would become the king of Israel. A Moabite, a non-Israelite, in the family line of the king of Israel is remarkable. It's remarkable because it's not a pure bloodline. It's remarkable because David would be the ancestor of Jesus Christ. And when you read that same list of ancestors in the book of Matthew, you find Ruth, a Moabite, in there. Some believe, and I do too, that Ruth argues for a more tolerant view of the surrounding neighbors, the surrounding nations, as Israel interacted with her neighbors. That's the punchline.